balance, control. The human body can be simply amazing. With over 650 fluid muscles working together in perfect harmony, movements seem graceful and effortless. A remarkable symmetry of mind and body. Precise to the smallest detail.
I appreciate the skill involved and the grace, the timing of their movements. In terms of myself, I'm resentful of my own body for not being able to pick up a cup with the same grace that someone strumming a guitar exhibits. I'm almost relieved when I can move a cup without spilling the contents.
Well, the first time I ever encountered Pat Rowe, it was just a name in a police report. I was covering the police beat for the Buffalo News.
Nobody plans it, nobody puts it in their day book, things to do today. I plan to die.
My Aunt Caroline, when she did become pregnant and did have Patrick, she was just elated and, you know, her dreams were answered.
She's good-hearted, loved me to death, and she just wanted me very badly.
He was such a happy little guy, he always laughing. He had a lot of hair too, very curly. His mother just took such good care of him the short time that she was there.
My dad was a big man. He was a tough man, stubborn man, Irishman, big drinker.
And he'd say things to me like, I want you to be sure and eat your peas. They grow hair on your chest. That was a favorite thing he'd say to me every time I was there. He'd always come up with that.
He was good to my mother when he's sober, but he was abusive when he was on an alcoholic binge. He was in the construction business, and that made him all the more macho, in contrast to me, who was anything but the perfect son. I apparently had the umbilical cord wrapped around my neck, and that cut off the flow of oxygen to the brain, which is one major cause of CP.
His legs were twisted and, you know, his toes went in. I think I was told that he probably would not be able to walk.
A lot of times I'm just fighting my own body. My mother died of heart trouble when I was 13 months old.
After Caroline died, Pat's father, Ted, took Patrick to Florida. I understood that he had a sister there and that Pat was going to stay with the sister.
Instead, Ted packed up his infant son, moved to Florida, and dropped off Pat at a group home. Pat never saw his father again.
I'm angry to this day for feeling left behind.
Soon after abandoning him, Pat's father died.
Faded away. He went into a drinking binge or something, and he died at my age of 5. Yeah.
While Pat felt abandoned, he was never forgotten.
When I was 4, my mother's sister, Joan, came and got me.
Grandpa and Grandma did go with Aunt Joan and Uncle Jim to Florida to bring Patrick back, and I was invited to go with them.
Joan had come down more than once. She knew the conditions were not good, and she knew she had to get me out of there. Joan couldn't have children, and she wanted a child, and they wanted to keep me in the family.
Old home movies show how happy Pat's grandfather was to have Patrick back in the family that loved him.
At the age of 4, she brought me from Orlando up to Cheektowaga, where I am now. What little I know of Joan, she was very artistic. I've got pictures of her in theater costumes and makeup.
She was the director of a theater group, and she traveled from city to city. I think actually while she was traveling was when she met Jim, whom she married.
In the beginning it was a threesome, and as long as I was little enough to carry and didn't require a lot of needs, it was okay.
As Pat grew, his orthopedic needs grew, and more demands were put on Joan's time.
I sensed that Jim began to resent that.
Things soon started to unravel at his new home.
Oh, I remember very well. I remember Joan crying a lot. Yeah, he would be abusive. He would take a strap to her. Why aren't you doing this? Why aren't you doing that? Why do we have to spend so much time with the kid?
I think, he tried to be a good guy, and things somehow didn't work out, evidently.
And when he got really angry, a couple times, he took a belt to me and her. But she took some real beatings from him, real beatings. Yeah.
Eventually, Pat's Uncle Jim would walk out on them, just as Pat's father had walked out on him a few years back.
Patrick thought of Joan as his mother, and she certainly thought of him as her son. And she did everything she could to make his life better.
She took me to museums and the zoo a lot. She spent a lot of time with me, I must say, at doctor's offices. Orthopedic surgeons, physical therapy, stretching my limbs, trying to prevent contractures because I had multiple contractures all over my body. I went from a wheelchair at times to the four-wheeled walker to the two-wheeled walker. I'd even tried crutches for a while, but that was more hazardous to my health.
Aunt Joan, just gave him so much attention. She had no other children, and he just became her life.
CP can affect part of your body, or it can affect your entire body, your ability to speak, all limbs, or it can affect only one side of your body.
Muscle control and movement were difficult as Pat's muscles tightened with contractures.
Your muscles are literally fighting your own body because they want to pull back, not extend, pull back.
And depending on the severity of the condition, surgery may be prescribed, as it was for Pat.
First initial operation was very scary.
To try and straighten Pat's terribly twisted legs.
My legs were so crossed that my aunt could not get a pair of pants on me without a tremendous amount of difficulty.
At age 6, another.
More tendons in my legs.
And then another.
My toes broken and pins inserted in each toe. I've had a very interesting orthopedic life.
And fortunately, with each operation, Pat's mobility gradually improved, and his independence grew.
And I woke up, and my legs weren't crossed. One was over here, one was over here, like I saw able-bodied people. I didn't like surgeries, but with each successive surgery, I felt a little more normal, a little less odd.
When Pat was 9 years old, his world expanded when he came here to Cradle Beach Camp.
Coming here was a time of tranquility, relaxation, and just to reflect on my life and the hardships others have gone through, swapping stories, good and bad, happy and sad. That was the whole gist of any social interaction. And it's true whether you're disabled, whether you're mentally challenged, physically challenged. If you don't have a chance to meet with your peer group, you will never grow as a human being.
Cradle Beach is a summer camp for disabled and disadvantaged kids. It opened its doors over 100 years ago, and more than 50 years ago, it began opening new doors for Pat Rowe and others. Steve Truesdale was a Cradle Beach camper.
I loved Cradle Beach because when I got out there, my entire status changed because it was accepted that I had a physical disability, and everybody accepted it.
Use your weights, come on.
Redefining what normal behavior is.
Cradle Beach is a place where kids learn from other kids with similar challenges. Cradle Beach was a revelation for Pat.
Well, I mean, it shaped my life because I made lifelong friends.
And Cradle Beach was the genesis for what would later become the most important achievement in Pat's life.
All right.
It was here at Cradle Beach that Pat played in his first wheelchair football game. Later, he would form a team that was to be known as the Silver Wheels.
The very first game ever played as a Silver Wheels game was played here.
Buffalo, New York is located on the eastern shore of Lake Erie.
It gets the brunt of the winter storms once the Arctic air comes rushing down from Canada, and it picks up the moisture from Lake Erie and dumps a lot of snow on Buffalo. Most people think of Buffalo, they think of a lot of snow.
Buffalo was kind of a blue-collar, work-a-day, a hardy community, an unpretentious place. People got up and they went about their business and they went to work and they worked hard, and you know, it was a friendly place, I think.
When I was growing up, there were car engine factories and oil refineries and chemical plants all along the lakefront there.
Buffalo prospered as an industrial city after World War II, but fell into economic decline during the 1970s and 80s.
If you're from Buffalo, we're starving for something that's going right. So when the Bills made their Super Bowl run, you know, years ago, that made the whole town take pride. We're a poor city, and we're an old city in general.
One day, while shopping with his Aunt Joan, or Mom, as Pat now called her, he became uncontrollably upset.
I just had this fear. What if Mom dies? And I was crying profusely. And she'd go, what are you crying about? What's wrong? And I go, someday you're gonna die. And she goes, don't worry about it, I'm fine. Well, turns out she wasn't fine.
My dad had written to me and told me about Aunt Joan's illness and how serious it was, that she was dying of cancer, pancreatic cancer.
Joan's sister, Jean, and her husband, Guido, agreed to care for Patrick while Joan was sick.
One day, my Uncle Guido, in a rare moment of actual compassion, he said, Pat, I got some bad news. He said, your mom died. And he hugged me. And for Guido to hug anybody, it took a lot. And I cried, like any 12-year-old kid would cry. And I knew that Mom had been sick, and Joan had been sick, and that she died. She apparently talked to Jean and Guido about becoming my legal guardian. I lived with them for about 7 years. It was not easy for them, and it was definitely not easy for me.
You know, the neighborhood kids very often were at our house, and we would play football. And I can remember seeing Patrick kind of looking out the front door watching us. You know, as a child, thinking, he must be enjoying watching us. Look how athletic we are. But not being able to empathize and say, well, my gosh, what would I be thinking on the other side of that screen door? Or would I be saying, you know, I'd give anything to go out and do that.
Patrick was coming into a family with 6 kids. The parents didn't have the time to give Patrick the kind of attention that he got from Joan.
As my needs became greater and demands on his time and his wife's time became greater, there was a greater resentment built up of going to teachers' conferences, orthopedic clinics, surgeons, doctors. I required more care, and I felt like I was taking time away from my cousins. They didn't verbalize it, but I felt the tension.
My parents were the son and daughter of Italian immigrants, and raised as a Catholic family. We had 6 kids, 3 boys, 3 girls. We lived in Williamsville, in the suburbs. You know, that was my father's probably biggest point of pride, was moving from the inner city to the suburbs.
Pat lived with his Aunt Jean and Uncle Guido for most of his teenage years, but he never felt loved by them.
My father and my mother cared about Pat. They took him in, they wanted him to do well.
And repeatedly, Guido said to me, "You need us, we don't need you. You need us, we don't need you." He repeated it, not just once out of anger, but I heard it numerous times.
The relationship between Pat and this family deteriorated, and despite a lot of good intentions, the strain would become too much between Pat and his aunt and uncle. Around the time of his 18th birthday, they all agreed it was time for Pat to move on.
So they fish around, they find some agency that'll take me and act as my guardian. It was hard for my Uncle Guido, who had a bad back and not a good attitude about life in general. And that was on a good day. And I always felt like the center of the storm, directly or indirectly, and repeatedly being told towards the final months, once you leave, as far as we're concerned, you're dead. And Guido told me this more than once, repeatedly. You need us, we don't need you. They did do a lot, but nobody deserved to be talked down to like that. The social worker comes over, interviews me, I guess, interviews Guido. A few weeks later, they placed me in a group home with about 22 other disabled people. Yeah, and that was rough.
I'm not sure that the two of them really did appreciate what each other was going through because, they both had challenges, serious challenges.
It was so odd leaving my aunt and uncle. It was surreal. It's like, is this happening? Am I really going? Never to see these people in all likelihood again, except at funeral? And that's exactly the way it turned out. Elementary school was my bigger taste of the disabled world. I went to School 84, which is still in existence. At School 84, it was strictly disabled people. But at the time I went, in the 60s, there was no such thing like there is now, of mainstreaming. The mentally retarded were put in with the mentally non-retarded, but orthopedically challenged.
My dad fought to have Patrick mainstreamed in a regular public high school so that he could be, so to speak, like everybody else and not be, singled out as a handicapped person.
When I went to school here, in the late 60s, this was all wooded area. Now it's all obviously built up. They did want me to go to a regular high school, not to a inner city vocational school. And I was kind of surprised because Guido never gave me much encouragement. That was a breath of fresh air. I was new, I was confused, but the people actually liked me. There was a lot of stares. They didn't know what to make of me because I was the first disabled person they've ever seen, and I was a bit of a novelty, much like the two African-American students that were attending class. They were cute, but let's not overdo this.
In high school, Pat had an idea to play a wheelchair football game against able-bodied opponents. The faculty of Williamsville North High School accepted the challenge.
See, the whole premise behind Silver Wheels is that we play wheelchair football indoors, and we play on a basketball court, and we ask our able-bodied opponents to know what it's like to be disabled for a few hours.
People in wheelchairs who might have a little bit of an advantage because they're used to their wheelchairs competing against people who may never have been in a wheelchair before.
Well, you kind of have to modify the rules, sort of like they do like with arena football. For example, you can use a standing quarterback, but the quarterback who stands can't run with the ball.
It's Saturday night and football is king in Cheektowaga. Members of the Silver Wheels take on players from the Cheektowaga Postal Station. The game is a lot of fun, but it also teaches people a lot about those who are physically challenged.
Show the public that handicapped people
though they may be in wheelchairs, do have abilities that go beyond their limitations. We're trying to stress to the public, a disability can strike anyone at any time.
The point of Silver Wheels was to be able to give people with disabilities a chance to socialize out in the neighborhood, to be able to show not only us but the community that we were viable people, that we could play a sport.
I recruited all the kids I went to grammar school with, and I said, I'm forming this team, do you want to join?
Silver Wheels was born, and Pat embarked on a life-changing endeavor.
If you're out there and you have a disability, you've had so many people tell you what your limits are. You can't do this, you can't do that. But in creating the Silver Wheels, did so specifically to break the bonds of what people were saying could and could not be done on behalf of people with disabilities.
People would actually sit in the stands with tears in their eyes at times when they watched these games, because some of the people that Pat had on his team were so profoundly disabled. You know, they had to have people pushing them in the wheelchairs, and that people would have to hand them the football. And but some of those people scored touchdowns, and they were so excited. You had cheerleaders in wheelchairs. It was just a real nice atmosphere.
Pat had these extra wheelchairs for them because it's a rough game, and you can't expect them to damage the chairs that they have to use every day.
Well, I was 12 or 13, and I met Pat while he was out at Cradle Beach Camp. And a place like Cradle Beach, a place like the Silver Wheels, are tools that you use, again, to expand your expectation of yourself.
Steve remembers his father's advice to learn and use his mind, since he would never achieve in the physical arena.
So develop your brain, because that's what you got to work with. Well, that would be most people's assumption, that you're not going to achieve in the physical arena. The Silver Wheels taught you exactly the opposite. It taught you that you could still achieve in the physical arena. You could think of yourself as a football player, even if those rules changed a little bit, okay? Assumptions about what the disabled can do are not in line with reality.
I went to the games. I was selfish because I enjoyed them. Before long, I got to love each and every one of the players. I felt like they were my son.
Clara Bowmaster's son, Stephen, played on the team for 30 years. His CP caused mental and physical disability.
All the players, they were drawn to Pat, and they wanted to do their best for him. They wanted to play their best.
God took my feet, he never took my desire to dance. And I think that is a lesson that needs to be taught to both sides of that equation. People without disabilities need to know that as much as people with disabilities need to know that it's acceptable to have those feelings of competition, to want to express them.
Oh, Stephen, he whenever he made a touchdown, he almost jumped out of his chair. I made that touchdown.
Still alternate with me. When I'm not in there, Jack will be in there.
Pat truly wanted to give them more hope in life and feel more like they're a man. He stressed to these young people, nothing's impossible. You can do it if you work hard at it. And he certainly proved it.
They find a place in the phone book, Child and Family Services. Guido or Gene say, can you take a disabled man, 18, 19, with CP? Where do you place a guy like that?
Just off Main Street in Buffalo, behind a Trico wiper blade plant, there was a group home, now boarded up, that Pat once called home.
And that was hard. That was hard because all these people were one way or the other rejected by somebody. I knew that they were hurting. They couldn't fit in socially, or they were gay, or they were not accepted because of their disability. One guy was a drug user. He was put there because he was too rebellious. 2 women had learning disabilities. 3 women were retarded and were constantly being fondled by the higher functioning males.
From here on, Pat would forever seek the family he never had. And because Pat no longer lived with his aunt and uncle in Williamsville, he was forced to switch high schools, going from a white suburban school to this one in the inner city, Kensington High School.
Yeah, I was trying to deal with my own coming of age with my sexuality, my disability. How do I fit into the bigger picture of life? Where's my future going to be? Am I going to live at this house for the rest of my life? I don't know. Fights going on in the hallway, people pulling knives on each other, police dogs coming in to sniff lockers. A very thuggish atmosphere. I knew a few disabled people. They showed me the ropes. I kept my mouth shut and kept my head down. My caseworker is 10 years older than I am. We're winging it together. He doesn't know what to do with me. Silver Wheels got me through a very bad year, yeah, socially. Yeah. I brought all my suburban friends and we met at the group home and kept Silver Wheels going.
Pat endured his senior year, eventually graduating from Kensington High School.
They handed me this piece of paper saying Patrick Rowe had completed all the necessary requirements for his high school degree, and that was it.
Today marks a new beginning for the Silver Wheels, as a new group of volunteers and supporters are recruited.
Hi, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Good. Okay, the Silver Wheels wheelchair football team is looking for young members to rebuild their organization. We're looking for players between 10 and 25. Is anybody taking notes, I hope? Bear with me if I'm talking too quickly. I'm looking to change attitudes about disabled people.
Silver Wheels, a football squad quite unlike any other in the area.
I've been at this since 1970. This is our 36th year. By playing against able-bodied people, yeah, we're spreading the word of ability versus disability triumphs all the time.
It was run by somebody who's disabled, somebody who understands the basic day-to-day existence of disabled people of all sorts. It's significantly different than a lot of, say, programs that were run by non-disabled people for disabled people, within which many times they wanted to show only the highest functional people.
If you remember the context of the video, the most severely disabled person is always a center, not only literally but figuratively, because a lot of these people you see as center, they would never be involved in any team because nobody would accept them as people. And the people like BJ, with the most ability physically, he's the showman of the group.
In the beginning of the video, we had celebrities and like sabers and stuff like that doing. Have you thought of doing that as like a big fundraiser?
Carol, speak on that.
Coaches do not want their players in wheelchairs. It's kind of like a bad omen.
For many years, Pat's dedication would be the driving force that propelled the Silver Wheels. But for as much as Pat has done for this organization, fortunately, he has not had to do it all alone.
And then third, I work in an office of about 200 employees, and I got approval to do a memo with the article attached.
But I'm also interested.
At Silver Wheels meetings like this one, new volunteers rev up to speed quickly.
Just break up in little groups for 5 minutes and just get everybody's phone number so that we have the kind.
I'm sure you've all read stories about young disabled person, finds love with nurse. She's overtaken by his strength, his rugged good looks, and they fall in love. And despite his disability, they ride off into the sunset, wheelchair in tow, kissing and hugging, and she dutifully takes care of him through the bad times and good. They've adjusted to his newfound status, and they now live in Scarsdale with 2 kids and a Volkswagen. It's a bunch of crap. I had this illusion that if I maintained my independence and stayed in the workforce, that I would be sharing my home with my wife or girlfriend. That didn't work out. That's not unique to me. But the plan was, if I could prove to some Miss Right out there that I was independent as possible with a home, a job, I didn't have a prison record, that I would attract someone.
Ron Kanazi is an accomplished drummer. Ron's opinionated.
Generally, segregated education tended to be...
Ron's intellectual.
Of a somewhat inferior quality.
A weightlifter. And Ron has a great memory.
Well, I first met Pat, I always remember the day. It was Saturday, May 28th, 1977.
Ron's also a great admirer of Pat.
We hit it off, and it's over 30 years now, and through thick and thin, through the good times and bad times.
Ron was born with congenital hereditary glaucoma.
In those days, it was in the 50s, they tried drilling holes, surgical holes into the eye to relieve the pressure.
But Ron's sight only got worse.
So I did have partial vision till I was about 12 years, just before my 12th birthday.
And worse.
You get what they call chronic iritis, which is a chronic inflammation.
And eventually...
It can become so acute and so painful that they eventually have to remove the eyes, which they did from both of my eyes.
Ron's blindness at such a young age was even more painful because of the treatment he received from other kids, their parents, and even teachers. Teachers who equated his lack of sight with a perceived lack of intelligence.
Yeah, to a degree, lack of intelligence, and I think perhaps even lack of ability to achieve anything. In other words, oh, he's blind, he'll never amount to anything, why would you want to hang around with him?
Along the New York-Pennsylvania border, in the little town of Wellsville, New York, George Witter lives in this neat house. George is a chaplain for the volunteer fire department. George has known Pat for a long time.
George Witter is very bright. He's got cerebral palsy like myself. He can walk.
Silver Wheels became an opportunity for kids like George Witter, kids from whom not a lot was expected, kids who had trouble fitting into groups at school.
They'd look at you as if you're some kind of a monster or some kind of a freak and don't get next to me, or they would cross the street to get away from me or to go around me. To me, they all walked funny. I walked normal.
Although Pat was only slightly older than George when they met as teens, George practically idolized Pat.
When Pat came into the room, into the class, it was like Jim Kelly, Ralph Wilson, and Thurman Thomas kind of all rolled into one, coming in to recruit and to see us. And we always considered us pretty much a nobody, a nothing.
I went to inspire, recruit players, tell them that this is a team, yes, and we play football, yes, but I'm trying to instill upon you, once the game is over, you've got to use whatever skills you do have and not focus on what you cannot do, but try to focus on what you can do.
Pat basically was a brother, father, and coach all rolled into one. Pat, if you needed advice, he'd give it to you. If you needed some direction, he'd give you that. If you needed chewing out, you'd got that.
What's the flag for?
And if you did something good, he told you about it. And he did it with compassion and heart. He did it out of a love for you as an individual and as a team. If I hadn't met Pat Rowe, I probably would have been a dropout in school.
Pat wanted the players to win.
Because if we can win the game, we can also win in life if we apply our abilities.
Dina, take him and pull, please. Good girl.
Athena is Steve Truesdale's assistance dog. She's named after the ancient Greek goddess Athena, a deity who represents wisdom, courage, and protection.
Good girl. Bring it here. Good girl. Oh, good girl.
Like Pat Rowe, Steve has CP. Athena helps Steve in countless ways. Today, Athena is in full protection mode, scrambling down the hallway of Steve's apartment building.
Pat, you know where my apartment is?
It's straight back, right, Steve?
Okay, straight all the way back.
I know
You're too bound up with convention.
Yeah, I'm just bound up. I should add more fiber.
The old friends get together and talk about their struggles.
Because we're kept apart economically, socially.
Bull sessions like this one are therapeutic for Pat, Ron, and Steve, but of course they all remain frustrated by society's lack of understanding of their plights.
My mother says, why don't you come out to my house and spend the night? I said, well, Mom, you've got a downstairs bathroom the size of a postage stamp. But when I come to the house, I use a urinal in the garage, and you don't have anywhere where I can shower. So overnight becomes a little problematic.
Yes.
And she said, well, you know, your father can always help you do this. You can always use the garage, or we could even, you know, help you bathe out back in the yard. And I'm like, I don't want to bathe out back in the yard.
Would they make that same silly statement toward your sisters?
No, they wouldn't. And this is my point. It's about the mindset, and it's about the expectations of the disabled.
Discussions like the one today reveal a lot of bitterness built up over the years.
Because we're so tied into the system, we're supposed to be like the grateful cripple that, you know, for lack of a better way to put it, where we're supposed to be happy with the social crumbs that fall from society's table.
As long as people view us as a subgroup, as long as that's in the mindset of people, it's going to be difficult to really get people to want to help change the situation.
Yes. I went from living in a group home my senior year of high school into Canisius, moving on campus. Truthfully, I did not think I'd make it to college. I thought I'd be channeled into working at Goodwill.
Located in Buffalo, Canisius College is known for both academic excellence and for teaching students the value of service to others.
My goals were pretty simple. Stay at school, get good grades, and try to get a sexual encounter. I got good grades, but I didn't have that sexual encounter.
Even so, Pat describes college as the best time in his life.
Canisius was like opening a door and going, welcome to a new life. This is what life could be.
When he met my oldest son, Mike, who was only a few years younger than Pat, they complemented each other.
He had a terrific sense of humor. He was a guy that really wanted to make people laugh and to enjoy life. And I was a bit shy and withdrawn, and so I kind of, hung out with Pat, and that's a way that I kind of came out of myself and became a little more social.
Pat became the resident assistant on his floor at the dorm.
His first day when he gave his introduction, he just said all the right things, the guys loved him, and then he opened the refrigerator and handed out beer. So how much better can it get, So he was a hit. Pat was really like in a center of attention at Canisius. He was a very popular guy.
For the first time in my life, I was respected.
We went out dancing, and one of the guys, Jerry Cushman, was on one side of Pat, and I was on the other side, and we would just kind of make sure he didn't fall over, and he would dance, and the girls were lining up to dance with him. So he had a terrific time.
I was equal. For a brief 4-year period, I was accepted, and that previously it didn't happen.
We had several occasions where Pat dressed up as Groucho Marx.
If I told you he analyzed his body, would you hold it against me?
The girls liked to, be around him. He was a celebrity.
I never forget a face, but in your case, I'll make an exception. If I hold you any closer, I'll be behind you. And for that Christmas gift, I gave the guys on my floor marijuana. I mean, it was illegal, but it was one of the most enjoyable gifts I ever gave. Yeah, 20 guys on the floor. It cost me most of my Social Security check, but it was worth it because I was accepted. I was, for one brief moment, I was as high and as goofy as they were. I transcended my disability. I became one with them. It was so important.
This is Pat with Moosehead Beer. Secret of his success.
Look like college.
I think that's after college.
He had a lot more hair in college.
Pat's one of Pat's girlfriends. He doesn't want to talk about that.
When the Verschneiders get together and look through their family photos, Pat shows up prominently.
This is the brother Pat.
Mike would bring Pat to our place, our home in Erie, Pennsylvania, for holidays and special occasions and like that. And we would go to Buffalo and go to some of the wheelchair games and got involved as much as we could.
It was really a 12-mile race that several of the guys were entering, and I said, oh, I want to enter that too. As we were sitting around talking about it, Pat jumped up and he said, I want to be in that race. Well, actually, Pat said, use me as the baton. And so we entered the race as a relay team.
And they're running, and I'm getting into the whole baton thing, and they're cheering me on. Go, Pat, go! And they're passing me along.
When we saw these guys coming, pushing Pat, we saw 3 extremely exhausted guys.
It turned out the walker had rubber wheels, but the guys were standing on the back to save energy, using me like a scooter, pushing, standing, pushing.
And when we got the baton, Pat, we started running, we realized how difficult it was to run and push this thing.
We get to the 10th mile, and I start smelling something. I go, something's burning here.
His wheels had actually caught fire. The rubber caught fire.
They were on fire, smoking.
So this happened about a quarter of a mile from the finish line. So the guys picked Pat up on their shoulders and carried him in the rest of the way.
I went through a pair of tires, but I was never so happy to see something burning in my life.
After college, Mike and Pat continued their friendship. They became roommates in this house that Pat bought near Delaware Park.
And the hardest thing was watching them leave because, everybody goes back to their lives and that, and they were legitimately crushed to have to leave. But when they came up and they thanked us for playing, no, the thanks should have been the other way. I mean, we learned so much that I've used from that day on in a lot of facets of my life.
I think the hardest part about Silver Wheels is every once in a while there'll be a member that'll have health problems, and there was a couple of members that I was really close with that passed away. Very able-bodied in their chairs, but outside in real life, I mean, they face a lot of problems. So there's kind of that side of it. Pat made a comment to me that a lot of these players that you saw in the video today, a lot of them aren't living anymore.
It's not just the game. It means the world to everybody to just mingle afterwards and talk, and the camaraderie is great.
After the game ends, a lot of these guys don't see each other until the next game. They talk on the phone and that kind of thing, but there's not a lot of, on the weekend, if I want to go see my buddy, I just hop in the car and go. And a lot of these guys, they can't do that.
Traditionally, the team has been all male. I'd like to keep it all male if I can, not to be a sexist, but I realize a lot of our males, all they do is hang around mom or their sister or their dog or whatever. So, this is the only way to male bond with other peer group members.
Pat took me out for my first legal beer.
Pat and Steve's friendship goes way back.
On Elmwood Avenue.
And sharing a laugh is priceless.
It was one of the best nights.
We had a bunch of fun having, I think it was like my first through 8th legal beer, if you want to know the truth. And a guy comes up to me at a bar, we're both a little bit drunk, and he says to me, what do you have? What's your disability? I said, CP. And he looked at me through bleary eyes and he said, cheese and pepperoni? And I said, I felt like throwing my arms around him and hugging him because there was no pretense. It's fun to watch people in a bar who see me have a couple of beers and get up on my crutches. I used to walk on crutches. And they'd see me dance and the light would come over their face like, my God, he's just out here to have a good time.
When I do the same thing, they think I'm having a seizure.
Well, as is the same case with me.
A noted children's orthopedic surgeon held out hope for Pat. Pat was already very familiar with him.
I'd known the man 9 years about. He did surgery on my hammer toes, and the surgery went well. Then I had some other surgery.
Those procedures over the years had improved Pat's mobility and outlook.
We would joke around. I didn't think of him as a doctor. I thought of him as an older brother that purely had my interest at heart. I was having pain in my left hip pretty bad. And I was told that if I had this one orthopedic procedure, the pain would be eliminated, my mobility would not be affected.
For Pat, this would prove to be a turning point in his life.
When I asked him what the consequences would be, he kept reassuring me, don't worry, I do this surgery all the time, no big deal.
Pat went along with the surgery, and the doctor did the surgery, and then Pat was put in a rehab situation to rehab from the surgery, and he never got better.
I remember waking up and going, oh boy, this is the worst nightmare I could ever imagine. I couldn't move a muscle. Nothing moved on my waist like it used to. Hips didn't move, knees didn't move, nothing moved.
It was appalling to hear what they had done to Patrick because he had made such progress with his mobility. And I have pictures where he's standing with his walker, you know, just getting around so well. He no longer, after that operation, could walk. He was in a wheelchair, and it was a devastating thing for him because he had worked so hard to reach that level of walking. And I think he had hoped that he could, you know, advance even further, but the operation was a terrible setback for Patrick.
Where he used to be able to use a walker and pretty much dress himself and put his shoes on and bend over and move around fairly well, you know, under those limitations, he now was confined to a wheelchair, and he never seemed to be able to have either the balance or the control that he had with his hips that he had prior to the surgery.
After noticing that I wasn't getting better, basically told me that, you know, well, these things happen. And it was no big deal.
By now, Patrick was living in the house he had bought near Delaware Park and had several renters to share the cost.
My home became another obstacle, not a source of comfort or joy or happy memories. And I would come home in a rental wheelchair, nothing's accessible, no grab bars on the walls, no handicapped accessible furniture, showers, or anything. I liked this home, and yet I detested it because it was my newfound prison with a mortgage. And as the paint peeled off the walls, so did my optimism about, can I cope in this home? Can I carry on a life? Yeah, from going from a walker to a wheelchair. I had to readjust and recalibrate everything. How I viewed myself, how others viewed me. I had to deal with a whole gamut of life in a wheelchair as opposed to life in a walker. I either had to reach out or I could have just said, okay, I'm gonna just take a bottle of something and poof, game over. I would be just another vital statistic. Yeah, handicapped man couldn't cope, reason unknown. And I did contemplate suicide. Yeah.
You know, when he went for the rehab and it didn't get any better, then his mood changed from upbeat to, you know, bitter resignation, I guess. Would say, hey, I got snookered on this whole deal.
Bert Lee said to me, well, I know it didn't quite turn out like we thought, but if it's any comfort, I'll waive my fee. And I thought, yeah, are you so insensitive? Do you think by waiving your fee, whatever it was, will give me my mobility back? It will not. And while I'm contemplating life every day, I'm getting angrier every day about my newfound medical state of immobility, my new dependence on others and my long-term psychological thought, yeah, I'm going to be less of a man than I was when I went in to the hospital. And that's a lot to deal with. When someone stands, they're literally looking down upon me. I felt that I was being looked down upon, literally and figuratively. And my intelligence didn't measure up, and my personality was lowered. The anger made me get up and get into the wheelchair and say, okay, you got two choices here. You can just give up your job, go totally on the system, get on welfare, or you can get in the wheelchair, go to work, try to resume life as you knew it, carry on with your life with the burden of a new disability and a new layer of bureaucracy, namely Medicaid. So I chose the latter.
And here's my son Stephen playing in the game.
When I was putting together the Silver Wheels football team, I came across Steve Bowmaster.
And here's Stephen with one of the cheerleaders from our team.
Steve is confined to a wheelchair.
This is the saber tooth.
With CP, and he's got other conditions. I did not know that he, along with myself, were both patients of Bert Lee's.
Ironically, Steve Bowmaster joined the Silver Wheels team after hip surgery performed by Dr. Lees.
God helped anybody that ever gets involved with him. That's how I felt.
His surgery didn't go as planned.
Stephen also had that surgery too, that they were supposed to be able to walk. Stevie, before he had the surgery, like Pat, was able to walk with a cane or a walker. And then after that surgery, he was in the wheelchair. I had anger. I just couldn't, I was so frustrated. This is where they get you. They tell you, well, we're going to do the surgery, we're not going to guarantee it. But he should be able to walk after. So naturally, you're going to take the chance on that surgery because you want your child to walk. Well, as it turned out, it was worse, and he didn't walk. It was hard. This man, in his way, gave us hope and took it away from them.
Stephen was not able to articulate, because of his mental retardation, his level of frustration. All he knew is, Mom, I can't walk. Mom, I can't do this. Well, I get up at 5 o'clock and just crawl out of bed. I have to rely on personal care aides to help me get dressed.
This is what I worry about him. Whether he's fallen. Because he doesn't have a lot of backup system there.
Hello? Do it again, Pat. You know what, Pat? It's locked.
Somebody locked this.
Okay.
Hello! Drugs are kicking in, aren't they?
I have no family in the area, and it's very hard because the aids have turned into my major source of social interaction.
We had the babies all weekend because Matt's sister was in that car accident.
I let the aide in around 5:30. Typically, the aide will come in and he or she will help me get dressed. Now we practice the Stevie Wonder. way of grooming. I've got 1 hour because I get picked up by a van service at 6:30, which I pay for myself so I can go to work. And in that hour, I've got to get dressed, shaved. Yeah, we've got at least a month there. Eat a minor meal, pack a lunch.
Fresh fruit.
I do an 8-hour day. I'm a full-time worker, but I only work 4 days. I've been using a vacation day or personal leave day every week because my stamina isn't what it should be. The cough drops, if you would, to help me to breathe later. Okay, gotta brush my teeth now. I arrive to work at 7 o'clock. My normal start time is 8 o'clock. I put in a regular work day, 8 to 4. I'm supposed to be picked up at 4 o'clock, but invariably they're late.
Oh, you're gonna take it.
Yeah.
You want water?
Yeah. Here, it's right there.
Why am I smelling tuna fish?
It's my cologne. Thank you, dear.
You're welcome.
She is one of Pat's aides. She helps where she can.
I've been with Pat on and off for about 10 years. He's unique. He's not like most clients because he's a steady client. We don't have a lot of people that are steady clients that live in the home and go to work.
Hi, Pat. It's Tom.
Oh, Tom, how are you? My God.
I'm good.
Good to
they
see
did the
you.
old switcheroo today.
My God.
I haven't seen you in ages.
How's your daughter?
She is good.
Good.
Yeah, thanks for asking.
Yeah, good.
She's doing good.
Good.
She's 19 now.
Oh, very good. Tom, just make sure the door's shut.
Oh, okay.
If you would.
Hey, you're not taking that cane, right? You don't
No,
take
no,
that?
no.
Shut that door. Okay.
Yeah.
It's locked.
Thank you.
How you been?
I'm doing okay.
I haven't seen you in a long time.
I know. I thought you quit the company.
No. Okay, up we go.
All right.
Beam us up, Scotty.
Yes. Typically, it's I get home, I get settled, I get washed up or whatever. I may get a drink of water or something, and then I wait for the aide to come at 5:30. And once the aide is here, I'm sort of locked into engaging myself with the person that's in my home.
And locked and loaded. Okay. All systems are go.
Sarasota, Florida, home to beautiful white sand beaches, cloudless blue skies, spectacular sunsets, is also home to Jim Essenson.
I met Pat in probably 1980. I was sharing space with some attorneys in Buffalo at the time. I had just gone out on my own. And Pat was trying to get the Silver Wheels football to be a tax-exempt organization so they could solicit contributions.
I come home I found myself struggling to use the bathroom. I never had that problem before, struggling to put on my clothes. I could do that prior to the surgery. Now, coming home, needed grab bars, needed a wheelchair, needed a ramp.
Certainly I told him, I says, gee, you know, at the very least you would think you would be able to get some type of malpractice suit of some sort here.
I wanted to sue Bert Lees, and I consulted with Essenson about bringing suit.
Pat had written a letter to Dr. Lees asking for more information about the surgery.
So we started to look at the possibility of what we call an informed consent case. This was the early 1980s, probably the dawn of informed consent as what we call a cause of action in law, or as a legal claim. And we started to look into that, and as part of that, I served a pre-suit subpoena on Dr. Lees to obtain Pat's medical records.
Painful psychologically. I remember sweating profusely, just trying to get on the bathroom toilet and getting off of it, and asking my roommate with epilepsy, "Can you help me?" And that poor man could barely help himself, let alone help me.
His world got really difficult as a result of losing the little mobility that he had. And I think had he known that this was a risk of the surgery, he likely would have declined it.
It's bad for anybody, but when you're used to one level of disability and you're made worse, it's terrible.
They had him psychologically evaluated, trying to say he was unstable. It was obvious to him, anyways, that they were trying to preclude the possibility that he might sue them, sue the doctor in particular.
After Dr. Lees operated on her son Stephen, Clara Bowmaster also wanted to sue, so she consulted a lawyer.
The lawyer said that it would do no good because that one little phrase, he might walk. And he says, you have to listen to everything they say and weigh it, which you just somehow don't, because you hear he might walk, you think, I'll try it. But we didn't realize that it'd make the condition worse. All I know is that he had to have this hip surgery because it shifted out of place, and they had to put this body cast on him to separate the legs and force the hip to go into place. I don't know the medical terms for it.
The concept of informed consent is that the patient has not been fully apprised of the risks of the procedure that's about to be performed upon them. Therefore, even if they're consenting to it, if they don't have enough information, then they're not giving what we would call an informed consent.
I don't know. Like I say, he was in and out of the hospital so many times, I get confused.
Pat was devastated by the negative results of the hip surgery that Dr. Lees performed. He went from being relatively self-sufficient. He was able to ambulate in a walker. And that was a huge setback. He just did not anticipate that the result would be so bad and that he would be so maimed, really, and injured by the results of the surgery. Changed.
He didn't know where to turn or what to do. I mean, he'd been active all his life up to the limitations of the CP.
And certainly in Pat's case, he wanted to know specifically, since he was relying on his whole life, was dependent upon his ability to ambulate in a walker, that he specifically wanted to know from this physician, how is this procedure going to affect my ability to ambulate and my mobility? I think the word he used was mobility. I learned that Pat had written a letter to Dr. Lees specifically asking him how the surgery would affect his mobility. And Pat felt that he never got a satisfactory answer from Dr. Lees, or got an answer that said everything would be fine. You know, I trusted Pat, and certainly my experience with Dr. Lees, my personal experience with Dr. Lees, suggested to me that Pat was probably telling the truth, and the doctor might not tell the truth, but I don't know that for a certainty.
First down 10 play from the West 32 for the East.
And Bert Lees got wind of the suit and went on the offensive and tried to literally get my friend disbarred.
Well, sometime after I issued the subpoena to obtain Pat's records from Dr. Lees, I got a letter from the Erie County Bar Association indicating that Dr. Lees had made a complaint against me.
One day, when Pat needed a ride to the doctor's office for a follow-up visit, he asked his friend for a ride. Jim Essenson, a lawyer by trade, obliged. The doctor invited Jim into his office during Pat's consultation. The doctor later filed a complaint.
In the complaint, Dr. Lees alleged that I had told him that I was a social worker in order to gain access to what would otherwise have been a confidential interview between the patient and the doctor. That, of course, was a lie. Well, at the time, I was a young man and just starting out in the practice. And I was on my own. I had a solo practice. And I had to hire a lawyer. I had to get have a court reporter. I had to attend a hearing. And finally, the doctor recanted his written statement. Still looking back, it was a difficult case, but had some interesting elements to it that, you know, might have inspired the right lawyer to take a shot at it.
He was not successful in taking the doctor to court because of the cost. It would have been the financial cost. Would have been $1,000 a day for a medical doctor to testify. And Pat could not come up with it, and we could not come up with the money.
I did attempt, after I moved to Florida, to get some colleagues in Buffalo to look at Pat's informed consent case. You know, he had certainly what we call in law a prima facie case, I thought, for informed consent. The key was to get someone to take it and fund it. And at some point, I had to go on with my life, and Pat was not able to find a lawyer who would take that case.
And if we could still take him to court at this day and age, I would.
Walk to my right. Walk right.
Steve Truesdale had the same procedure by the same surgeon that Pat says maimed him, but with entirely different results.
Athena, walk. There are two camps in and around this local area. My perception of him was much, much, much different than the one everybody else seems to carry. Wait, follow. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I always found Bert to be very competent. He always spoke to me as an adult, which I really enjoyed because I only knew him when I was 12 and up to 15. And he always sat me down and talked to me as an adult. And he always made me understand what he was going to do. And he always told me, hey, look, there's a danger this might not work. Pat said, I think he's the devil. And, and I said, geez, I don't know.
Dr. Lees declined requests for an interview. He stated that the surgery was successful since Pat no longer experienced pain in his hips and now sits well.
I know I swore by Dr. Bert Lees, and I know everybody else swears at Dr. Bert Lees.
Let me know when you're ready to get me out there.
Loading the cannon. Almost ready.
Fire in the hole.
Fire in the hole. Loading the cannon.
Okay. Feet are in.
While I'm down here, sir, do you want me to check under the hood? Do I look good? I'm in a freaking wheelchair. I got bad hips. Yeah, I'm comfortable. It's all relative.
All right, can you pull yourself up?
Only with a better education. Okay. Oh my God. Who needs gymnastics? Just do that 10 times a day. It's a lot of work to do that. And it's not fun. I need a cigarette. Was it good for you?
Pat, the job he has, I guess he works for the state. And it's a steady job, and it makes him an income. But with his organizational capability, I know he always would have hoped by this time to have gotten, you know, a little better or a significantly better position of some sort.
I work in the business office of the Buffalo Psychiatric Center. I stress that I work in the psychiatric center. Oftentimes, the new staff thinks I'm a client that just wandered away from the ward and is playing with paper. And I've gotten some strange looks like, are you away from program or something, sir? Just the other day, I had a driver literally say to me, do you work here or are you a psych patient? In front of my supervisor. My supervisor looked at him like, what are you talking about? But this driver, he had this preconceived notion that anybody in a chair also must have some judgment impairment or psychiatric disorder. I do travel vouchers. Anyone that travels, I reimburse them. If they go to conferences, they submit forms, I reimburse them. It's a job, it's a state job with benefits. I'm there for the people, and everybody works because they have to make a living. But I do need, quite frankly, social interaction. I've had coworkers say to me, when I first started my present job 28 years ago, you're taking a job away from an able-bodied person. Why are you doing this? Why don't you just sit home, watch TV, and let the system take care of all your needs? Cooking, cleaning. You won't have to battle the elements. You won't have to deal with anything. You sit in front of the television or the computer screen, and society will take care of you. But the same people that may say that may be going, I know this person could do more. Why isn't he or she working?
Generally speaking, disabled people are underemployed. I mean, even when they have steady jobs, my opinion is that what I've seen, that they usually work at jobs for which they are overqualified.
Silver Wheels changed the lives and fortunes of countless people. Pat was a tireless worker, organizer, and coach. He received many accolades for his leadership and accomplishments, such as the Buffalo City Citizen of the Year.
At our paper, it's considered a very prestigious honor. I called him and he was very moved by it. But what he really wanted was people to get out and help people like him.
And I am speaking of a new engagement in the lives of others, a new activism.
In 1988, President George Bush recognized the many volunteers who make America a better place.
I've spoken of 1,000 points of light, of all the community organizations that are spread like stars throughout the nation doing good.
And in 2001, President Bill Clinton recognized Patrick as one of those prestigious daily points of light.
And I'm honored to receive it for a body of work of helping the disabled.
But more important than the awards was the influence Pat had on so many lives.
You had to see the enthusiasm in them and to see how proud they were that they were being an athlete, that they were playing football. And to them, that meant the world.
At the end of June, we would have an awards luncheon. I'd make sure every player and volunteer would receive some recognition and plaques or something like that.
We had one young man, and he had several brothers and sisters. And at the one awards dinner, we gave out trophies. And he grabbed his trophy and he says, you know, all my brothers and sisters came home with the trophies. Now I got one to take in and put on the mantle. And you had to see the pride in his face. It brought tears to everybody.
Jim Essenson was recognized for his legal expertise, contributed to help Silver Wheels attain 501c3 status. He was given a recognition plaque in 1981. It remains on his wall to this day.
I keep it up there for me because it reminds me of Pat and the work that he did and does and the way that those kids looked up to him as an inspirational figure. You know, well, maybe it's hedonistic. It makes me feel good to look at that plaque and, you know, think about Pat and Silver Wheels football.
I was given in July of 2000 the proclamation by the then Mayor Masiello of being Pat Rowe Day, where they recognized over 30 years of working with the disabled, also a treasured point of recognition. I'm gratified in the awards. You know, the awards leave a footprint of where I've been. They're also a source of pain to me because I will never see many of those volunteers again. Many of those members have since passed away. With every award, I'd like to turn them in and bring a past loved one or player back to life.
Okay. Oh. You broke up. Oh, no.
I've had a couple really good volunteers, but the bulk of them came and went.
Okay, what's her number, Chad?
I've got more to give, but I have no way to meet my own needs. So I'm looking for volunteers. We're not going under, but quite frankly, we're in a state of limbo right now, and that weighs heavily on my mind.
People fail to realize the tremendous amount of energy that all disabled people have to put forth just to do the most mundane things that most people don't even give a second thought to.
You know, for Patrick, everything takes a long time. Dialing the phone takes a long time.
Can we just review that one more time so when we type it up,
To call a volunteer so that they could find a location and then transport a dozen kids and get the wheelchairs there and get the insurance signed and collect the money so that the van driver could get paid and then order the pizza and give a plaque to the challenging team and trophies to the kids that played. All of those things were, for an able-bodied person, it would be a big task, and for somebody that the smallest movement is difficult was monumental.
The team, whatever sport was practicing tonight, they're probably not going to be there.
These volunteers play a key role in the Silver Wheels' success.
Oh, no, it is, yeah. She got them all in her van.
There we go.
One volunteer named Edgar Bartleson became very close to Pat. Although able-bodied, Edgar had a disabled sister who was a cheerleader for the team, so he agreed to help out.
And I trusted him enough to make him an assistant coach.
Seemed like a very mild-mannered, friendly guy. I talked to him for about 5 minutes, and Pat was telling me that he was a good volunteer.
He told me once he thought of me as a brother.
Pat and Edgar would become very close friends and work together for the next 3 years.
We'd share pizza and a beer, and he'd come over socially and, you know, just shoot the breeze about life and what his goals were.
He would help with the loading and unloading equipment. He was not disabled, of course. And he would help push the kids around, you know, in the wheelchairs that were a little less functional and move them around. And I had talked to him, let's see, they had a dance, their annual kind of a dance pizza party thing. It was on the 19th of October. It was a Saturday, I believe that. And I had talked to him very briefly.
At the luncheon, he would often receive special mention and a plaque for his involvement in Silver Wheels.
But Pat and Silver Wheels were not the only things on Edgar's mind. Although only 19 years old, Edgar was the primary caregiver for his disabled sister.
I could relate to his sister because she had the same condition as I did. And she was just a nice person. She was a cheerleader. He was the primary person that lifted her or assisted her with personal care needs, which the mother could not do.
He had to help out way too much, and he wanted to leave and get away from his mother, from the way I understand it.
I went downstairs like I usually do on that particular day and lifting weights. It was the 7th of November of '85, I believe. I think it was a Thursday, yeah. Turned on the radio, like I usually do when I lift weights. On the local station, WKBW, I hear, at the top of the news today, a 33-year-old Patrick Rowe, disabled Buffalonian, fights for his life.
It came over the TV. My parents called me. I was in seminary in D.C. And I was just blown. It was like unbelievable.
So I was on one of the exercises, but I almost fell off the exercise board in this shock. God, what the hell happened?
Didn't know what to do.
It makes me angry on all kinds of different levels.
It just broke my heart to hear about this.
It was unbelievable that anyone would do that.
Because it happened to a friend, and as somebody with a disability, it could happen to me.
I hear the doorbell ring. It was pitch dark, it was cold.
It was about midnight, according to the police reports. It took him a while, I'm sure, to lift himself up and get himself into a chair.
I crawl out of bed, crawl into the wheelchair, answer the door.
And it was a fairly large house, and he had other people sharing it, paying rent.
I buzzed him, I had an intercom, and I asked, who is it? When I asked him what he wanted, he said his buddy's car ran out of gas, could he use my phone? I had no reason to fear him, I let him in. I was in my pajamas. Tenants are fast asleep upstairs, helps me back into bed, doesn't say a lot. I asked him, how's he doing? He was unusually quiet. He asked if he could get a drink of water, did not go for the phone to call anyone. Yeah, it was pitch dark. He goes into my kitchen. He was not going for a glass. I didn't know what he was doing, but he was rummaging through my silverware. He comes back quiet. He was standing real close to me over the bed. I was lying down, flat on my back. All of a sudden, I felt a steak knife quickly thrust into my chest, and I said, what are you doing? And he kept slashing away. Left arm, right arm, chest, both wrists were slashed. I tried to fight him off. I kept asking him, why are you doing this? What are you doing? All he said is, while he's stabbing me, my sister's been a brat. My sister's been a brat. That made no sense. As he's stabbing me, my sister's been a brat. Meanwhile, this man who I had known, young man, who said he loved me, was trying to kill me. He gets his full body weight on top of me. It's pitch dark. Yeah, I can feel with each knife wound going in, I can feel a little oxygen and blood spewing out. I literally heard the blood trickle out of my body like a faucet that was left dripping.
I was in my dorm. My parents had called me on the phone, and they told me, you know, something to the effect of Pat was attacked. He was stabbed 23 times. He's alive, but he's in the hospital. You know, would you like to visit? And I said, of course.
For quite a while, we didn't know if Pat was even going to make it or not.
He was in a bed, and, you know, he was taped to a lot of things, machines and things, but he just seemed so small and fragile.
He tried to smother me while stabbing me.
I remember thinking that I wanted to go and get the guy.
After the last stab wound, I said, okay, you're gonna die. Straight up, you're gonna die.
I wonder how we can work this so that I can get a group up and we can go do this and we can get away with it.
They treated it as a homicide when the people arrived on the scene, when the police arrived.
Well, nobody plans it. Nobody puts it in their day book. Things to do today. I plan to die.
He was black and blue and bandaged and puffed up, and you couldn't even see his eyes. I mean, he was... I couldn't believe it was Pat.
Yeah, okay, God, it's up to you. I'm not going to fight him, so I just figured if I shut up, he thrust a knife into my chest a couple more times, coming close to my heart. I found out afterwards he punctured a lung, punctured my spleen, slashed both wrists. And it was a medical mess.
When my mother called and told me about it, I was just shaking, just trembling, and I was just so horrified and wishing that I could do something, you know. And what I did do as soon as we hung up was to call the prayer chain and just ask for prayers for him, because I didn't know what else we could do.
And then I just lay quietly, and
I did not want to entertain the thought that we would lose him.
It made me so angry, because with Pat and his physicality, you could have taken Pat, placed him on the floor, robbed his house stem to stern, left, and he wouldn't have been able to do a damn thing.
Yeah, he turned on the light, found the keys, quickly turned off the light, and I heard him make a beeline for my front door.
Instead, Ed chose to take out a knife and stab my friend to the point where he was on the verge of dying, steal his car, and he didn't get too far at all.
Then I heard the car drive away, and I knew he had taken the Civil War's vehicle and he headed to Florida. I found out later.
Patrick was left for dead, is what he told me, and he just lay very still.
This would have been the perfect opportunity to say, okay, Lord, I gave it my best shot. I can just lie here in my own blood and just peacefully pass away.
Neil Verschneider, he's a Jesuit priest. My brother came and gave Pat Rowe the last rites.
Yeah, and that would be my perfect way out of this, what had been a very hard life.
When you have a disability, I'm not jealous of anybody, but I certainly do recognize that there are people walking on the streets when I can't walk on the streets. They can jump in a car, and I can't jump in a car. They can do all the things that they can do, and I can't, and you learn to live with that. But somebody takes all of those things which you begin to see as gifts, and they say, that's not enough. I want more, and I want it off the back of somebody that's been helping me out now for 5 years, that's invited me into their home, that's made me a part of their family and a part of their experience. I was so angry.
The only reason I lived, I found out later, was the steak knife used in the attack had broken, and he simply ran out of knife to stab me with. They found half of the knife on the floor, covered in blood, under the bed at the crime scene.
What Ed did broke all sorts of barriers in a bad way. You're not supposed to do that.
this would have been a perfect vehicle or license to die. But something inside of me said, you can die now or you can get up, if you can get up, and try to get to the phone, and you're needed because the team needs you. The kids need you. And that was my big reason to get out of a blood-soaked bed. I remember the local newscaster saying, "Disabled man clings to life, attacker still at large." I heard this as I'm going in and out of consciousness in the hospital room and friends around me weeping.
Ed Bartleson escaped to Miami, Florida, where his sister lived. She called the Miami police when she learned what happened, but they released her brother since no arrest warrant had been issued by the Buffalo police.
And after I regained some level of consciousness and can put coherent sentences together, the police are questioning me, was this a drug deal? Were you lovers? What was your relationship to this man? I told them he was a volunteer, couldn't figure out the motive.
Eventually, Ed Bartleson was finally returned to Buffalo to answer for his crime.
He told the judge that he was out of control when he did this, that he considered Pat a friend, but that drugs had totally taken over his life. And the judge told him that that really was no excuse for what he did to Pat.
And he was very somber, looking down. He didn't make eye contact with me. The judge said, "We realize, Mr. Rowe, the trauma of your situation, but for the record, we require that you make a public statement as to the severity of your attack and your recommendations for sentencing." I can barely speak beyond a whisper. I can barely get any air into my lungs. I'm wheeled in by two members of the crime victims support staff. No relatives, no friends. Meanwhile, directly behind me was all of his family. In a very timid voice, I said, "I'm very physically hurt, psychologically hurt, that somebody that claimed to love me like a brother and respect me, could allow this to happen, and an attack of this nature should not be taken lightly, and I urge you, judge, to give my attacker the maximum under the law." And that was it. I was petrified, I was shaking beyond belief. I was angry, I was scared at the same time. All of his relatives were sobbing, whispering behind me.
Patrick never again spoke the name of his attacker, Edgar Bartleson.
I was high on crack, and in my defense, how bad a person could I be if Mr. Rowe gave me awards recognizing my devotion to him? Well, the judge says, "This is your first brush with the law." The charge went from attempted murder to first-degree assault. Upon hearing the sentence, 18 years in prison, sighs go out from his family and back of me. I hear a thud in the background. His mother, she fainted. She was holding onto her daughter's wheelchair so tightly that she literally tipped over her daughter. And I'm thinking to myself, give me a frickin' break here. I'm the crime victim, and she's making out like she is the traumatized one. The sister is yelling, "I hate you, Pat, I hate you." I was conflicted with so many feelings. It was a mess, psychologically, physically, a trauma beyond belief.
Edgar Bartleson agreed to a plea bargain sentence of 18 years. He served 12 years. 6 years were forgiven for Ed's good behavior in prison.
I felt the sentence was way too lenient, given the severity of the attack. Here I'm stabbed 23 times. I thought it would be equal justice if he was given 1 year for every stab wound. That would have been fair. But I wasn't doing the sentencing. And it was his first offense. But it was a big one.
Patrick says he could not get a good night's sleep in the room in which he was almost murdered. So he sold his house in Buffalo and moved to a suburb. Although Silver Wheels opened many new doors for people like Steve Truesdale,
Quarterback looks.
many doors remain shut.
What I've always felt is that society, community, is much more comfortable with us when we do stay home and eat our tomato soup and our happy,
Happy meal.
For these men, society can be very dehumanizing. Pat recalls the lack of respect shown students at his elementary school, School 84.
You guys used to tell me how they'd pull you out of class and parade you half naked or naked in front of a bunch of medical students to show, now this is a spinal bifida, this is a cerebral palsy, this is a whatever.
Many times they took us out of class and literally I was put in a diaper and asked to walk in a walker so they could videotape my ambulation techniques.
And disability stereotypes exist on many levels.
I wanted to bring this up because to me it's so clear here. This is Share Smile Becky, or the Mattel version of disabled Barbie, okay? Barbie has been a neurosurgeon, an astronaut, an accountant, all things, and she's still the same normal Barbie. Maybe she gets a different uniform. When Barbie became disabled, not only did her name change, okay, but expectations for her changed. She doesn't, on the side of her wheelchair, it doesn't say New York Marathon, although New York Marathon has a section for wheelchairs, it says Paralympics. So not only is this a different character, but with a different set of expectations.
The opinion would be that it would be somehow degrading to that image to have a disability Barbie.
I think the implication is more basic, that her disability fundamentally changes her from Barbie to another character.
Right.
And then the name, Share a Smile, okay? This whole aspect of if we have a disability, it's our responsibility to take it with a grain of salt.
And keep smiling, the smiling poster child.
You're dealt a hand of cards like we're dealt.
Yeah.
You have to go out and you have to smile on a daily basis, because otherwise people aren't going to come near you.
It does seem that we are expected to be the grinning poster children much more than if you were non-disabled and you were in a position of authority or just meeting people. If you're disabled, you can't be the strong, silent type. You can't be a type A personality that's a little bit maybe hypercritical or a little bit, even some people say on the arrogant side. Those are all negatives if you're disabled. But if you're not disabled, then all of a sudden you're more appealing, you're tough, you're macho. But whoever heard of a macho disabled guy?
Okay, we're approaching my old house where I was stabbed. This is the first time I've actually been back. I have a collage of memories in terms of being in this big house and 5 other people with me. And the house was in better shape when I had it. Sort of ironic. I mean, it does bring me instantly back to the night of the stabbing. A lot of my blood-stained memories are still in that home. And you can take cleaning products to clean a wall, but you can't take a solution to wipe out painful memories. I lost more than blood at the scene. I lost a very valuable commodity, trust in human beings.
The attack on Pat was one of the most disturbing stories I've covered because he's such an innocent victim. There's no reason this should have happened to him. And he's at such a disadvantage already. It upset the community quite a bit. People were very disturbed to hear what happened to this guy, especially because they knew about the good things he'd been doing with the Silver Wheels.
Here was a gentleman, a kind man who reached, I don't want to get upset, but I'm going to tell you, here was a guy that did everything right, that everybody looked up to.
One of the things that I admire about Pat is probably his spirit. The strength of his spirit is so great, and it is a gift that he's been given, that he has been able to endure these things where other people would have perished.
And to his great credit, he survived it, and continued on with the good things he was doing after that.
He was still really recuperating, if you will, from the effects of the surgery and adjusting to his new life and his new found dependency on others. And to have this to happen was just awful. And of course the event itself was, as described to me, nothing short of horrific.
My belief says that the next life is going to be infinitely more rewarding and just than this life.
These are very modest homes, but they're well kept up. And I do my best to try to maintain the property. I've lived there since 1986. Is the job coming like you thought, or?
Well, it was a big job. It was a lot bigger than I thought it was, but yeah, it came out nice.
I had enough money from the sale of the other house to put a down payment on the house I'm living in now. Yeah, I live on the second floor. I have an elevator in my home. I just like the security of living on the second floor rather than living on the first floor and feeling more vulnerable.
It'll last you a long time.
Yeah, paint job will probably outlive me. Being a homeowner is a symbol of being independent and being a contributor. I don't want people going, oh, the handicapped guy lives there, nothing matches. Yeah. I mean, I had this illusion that if I maintained my independence and stayed in the workforce, that I would be sharing my home with my wife or girlfriend. That didn't work out.
Paul Johnson has CP, and today Pat hires a taxi to visit him.
If I could have had a brother, I would have chosen Paul Johnson because of his spirit, because of his compassion, his intelligence, and his awareness of the world.
Paul is from Chicago and still a fan of the Bears and Cubs. He lives now in the Erie County Medical Center.
Paul?
Hey, Polly, how are you? Good to see you, my friend. Polly, I brought you some cannolis. They're an Italian pastry.
Paul uses a voice-activated computer to control his TV, telephone, and for other functions.
John. Yes. TV. Television. Volume. So what are they made of?
Pat and Paul are friends with many things in common.
It's a very nice confection, very big among Italian people. Yeah, I know you're not Italian, but yeah.
I could be from the dark side.
Yeah.
The dark side of Italy.
Yeah. You and me are from the boot.
Yeah.
We're from the boot.
We've known each other for how long, Pat? Ever since 70?
Pat and Paul have been friends for decades. Their friendship can be traced to Paul's involvement with Silver
I just remember us having a whole lot of fun during those times. I think I remember them asking, you want to play football? I said, yes, definitely. One of the games we played at the auditorium.
Memorial Auditorium.
The old auditorium.
Yeah, in 1980.
It was just a whole lot of fun. They enabled guys like us to be able to do sports too, play football and have a good time, be part of a group. It felt great. We were able to be on a team and got recognition. It was really nice. Enjoyed every minute of it. I remember once when the guy was going to catch the ball, and I reached out and I stopped him from catching the ball, but I fell out my chair.
Yeah.
And the guy said, "Are you hurt? Are you hurt?" I said, No, I'm not hurt. I got back up and got back in the chair.
That's what I've always liked about you. You know, you've always fought back. And I know this
got back in the chair and continued on.
Yeah. I know this is your toughest battle, but
yep.
I give you credit.
And it was just fun being with other guys, you know, and learning how to play the game and learning friendship and teamwork. Before this, I was a paraplegic. Left side was paralyzed, but I could walk. And I could take care of myself. I did pretty good.
He had his own apartment. Yeah.
I was in a wheelchair. All I know is I was crossing the street, because there was a ramp there. And the next thing I knew, when I woke up, I was coming in the emergency room doors to the hospital.
Yeah.
And there was a guy parked, and the guy behind him came out. I didn't see him, and he came out before I knew it, and he hit me. Well, if I could just get my right hand back, I'd be happy.
I know, Paul.
I could get along without walking.
And I've saved a ton on footwear myself. So.
Yeah. My disability came when I was 8 months old, so I was able to deal with that all the way up through.
Yeah.
But to be where I can't do nothing, that's what really kind of gets on my nerves.
I know, Paul. I know.
But you, as you know, where there's a will, there's a way.
I know.
I'd be happy as a pig in the hoop if I could just get my right hand back.
I know.
Because then at least be able to do something for myself. I mean, I have to brush my teeth and do this and do that. And it's ridiculous.
I know.
To be able to do everything for yourself.
Yeah.
Now I can't do anything for myself.
I know you're lost, Paulie. I mean, I couldn't walk like you, but the surgery that I had crippled me. But you lost more.
Yeah.
That's why I can relate to your situation. If I could have had a brother, I would have chose you. Paulie, could I get a picture of this picture?
Which one?
Of you in the tuxedo?
Okay, I'll see if I can get her to give me one.
Yes. Anyway, I have to go. Yeah. But I wanted to see you, and I've always admired you, for many reasons, because of your intellect and your sense of humor.
Well, Patty, if you're not able to laugh at yourself, something's wrong. You gotta have a sense of humor, especially to live in this world.
I know.
You're my only visitor today.
Well,
glad you came.
Well, good to see you, Paul. If you need to talk, you know my number.
Yep.
Okay. Take care, Paul.
Over the years, Pat held out hope that the Silver Wheels would revive. He stored the chairs in his garage for years after the schedule waned to almost nothing.
I gave them away to a nonprofit group, a group that helps other disabled people in third world countries. That was one of the saddest days of my life because that literally meant the end of Silver Wheels.
After 35 years, the Silver Wheels spokes have stopped turning. Pat no longer has the resources.
He's very disappointed that he can't keep it going. Physically, Pat is not able. They used to do like 10, 12 games a year, maybe 15.
It was a big loss to our young people and to the future young people that could have still be playing Silver Wheels if we had the funding to keep it going. It broke Pat's heart. He put so much into that, and not to be able to keep it going was heartbreaking for him.
That literally meant the end of an era. To my two mothers and my father. I brought the flowers for my moms and dad. I didn't know you well enough to know what you drank, but I would have brought it for you. What do you want from me, Lord? What more can I do to make my parents proud? I hope I've left some mark on this earth to say your son, nephew, was here. And he tried to make a difference.
Knowing Pat Rowe has changed my life. if you can imagine not seeing anyone for a generation and still thinking about them when, you know, times are tough, or, you know, you have something personal you have to overcome.
He just had so much drive in spite of the struggles in his life. I just admired him so much. I mean, he was someone who took lemons and made lemonade out of them. Really, he did.
They wouldn't have had that activity in their life. They wouldn't have had that joy, that social activity in their life, were it not for Silver Wheels.
He really wants people to make the best of their situations. He wants people to take risks, to fight like he has, and to really do whatever they can to become the best they can be.
Just because you made one touchdown doesn't mean you can't make another. And that's what he'd drill in them. You don't relax when you once make it, keep going.
Out of all the people that I've met in 30 years as a news reporter, Pat Rowe is probably one of the 2 or 3 most admirable people I've ever met. He's a courageous individual. He cares about others. He hasn't let his own setbacks discourage him to the point that he stops trying to help others. He's just an amazing guy. He's an inspiration to any person who ever faced an obstacle in their life.
I hope my legacy will be someone who really cared about other people, someone that tried to teach other people by example how to live and how to interact with society with humor and compassion and intelligence.
That you could have a disability, you could go to college, you could have a job, you could run a not-for-profit organization that helped people, you know, you could have fun, you could have a sense of humor, you could have friends, and still have, you know, still use the gift of life that you've been given to have a productive life. And I think that's his legacy. Aside from the fact that he's a very nice guy, and he's always been nice to people. That's important.
He's a fighter, and he's a guy who wants to make the most of himself. And he's always been that way, and he's done a tremendous job. He wants to compete, he wants to make a mark and help people in the process, and he's done that over the years in a big way.
I've always been maybe pig-headed, maybe not knowing my place, maybe expecting more out of myself than others do. I don't know. I had no, I mean, I had end goals that I wanted to achieve as an adult, like getting married, which didn't happen. Yeah, I had goals of owning a house. I didn't think it was any big deal. If I could get a job.
Because of the trials he's endured, it's incredible. A person with an incredible spirit has been able, you know, like Pat, has been able to go through this life and not only survive but thrive. And God will not forget that. That will be rewarded. That's my belief.
I had a neighbor that she didn't want her kids even near Steve. And I says, he's not contagious. And I says, and God help your children if they grow up and get married and have a handicapped child, well, how are they going to look at their child and treat their child?
I'm not going to go to bed tonight Polish and wake up not being Polish tomorrow. I am who I am, but anybody in the audience that's hearing this could go to bed tonight and have themselves or any member of their family wake up and have a disability. And when people become traumatically injured, I think this is part of the baggage they carry with themselves, is what did I used to think about people with disabilities, and now does that apply to me?
Good game. Good game, Jeff. Good game. Thanks a lot, guys. Thanks so much. Thank you, guys. Good game, man. Good game, guys. Thank you.
You try to double, triple bump.
Thank you, guys. Thanks a lot. Good game. Good game. Thanks so much.